Welcome, everybody. On behalf of Dime Youth, I would like to welcome you to another program on Community Web TV. Today's program is going to be on International Women's Day. During this hour, we are going to have a series of clips from multiple interviews with our mums, a video from the UN, poems and songs sang by our amazing Dime Women's Group and Youth Group. International Women's Day is celebrated every year on the 8th of March. It's a day where people around the world dedicate it to celebrating women in their lives, but it has origins in the working women's fight for equal rights in the workplace and in society. Today, women are recognized and celebrated and appreciated for their hard work. Schools and other institutions are becoming more involved in celebrating women, and hence why from a young age, people are seeing how important it is to appreciate and see how far women have come. For many years, women faced so many difficulties and fought hard for all the rights we take for granted today. They went from only doing household chores to owning their own businesses, studying and working, but most importantly, becoming independent mentally and financially from their husbands and fathers. This is an inspiration to us as young women, as we know that there is still more that we need to fight for. Our first clip will be a global history of women's rights put together for a quick introduction.
Women and girls are leaders, change makers, caretakers, and peacekeepers. But while they have an empowered role in our societies, to this day, women and girls are still forced to fight for their rights. How much progress have we achieved, and how much work remains? How can you carry on the fight for equal rights? Women's struggle for equal rights is centuries old. But 1848 marked a watershed moment for women's rights with the Seneca Falls Convention, where women activists publicly petitioned for their civil, social, political, and religious rights. In 1893, New Zealand sent a message to other activists across the world that equal voting rights were achievable through advocacy. Entering the 20th century, women around the world are mobilizing in ever greater numbers to campaign for gender equality. Just as women's role in the labor force is rapidly evolving by opening up options beyond caretaking roles. In 1945, the United Nations is formed in response to the destructive toll of 2 world wars, and Eleanor Roosevelt oversees the drafting of the Universal Declaration of Human Rights. For all the world to hear, she and other advocates underline the place of women's rights within. This sets a foundation for women's rights norms and standards at the international level. In the subsequent decades, just as women are taking historic leadership positions in government, women activists at the grassroots level dovetail with the worldwide momentum by becoming powerful symbols of feminist resistance and social change. This momentum reaches a climax in 1995 when the Beijing Declaration and Platform for Action presents a visionary global agenda for women and girls' rights. But in spite of all the progress, as we enter the 21st century, patriarchal stigmas persist and exemplary leaders arise to resist them. With the rise of the digital age, social media emerges as a crucial tool to galvanize populations in the fight against injustice. A single woman's voice is now louder than ever. Grassroots activists trigger social movements online and offline, from cities to villages, inspiring future generations of women and girl leaders. After relentless campaigning, these movements generate changes in policy that signal a true shift in international attitudes and practice towards equal rights. Where are we now? A quarter century after the Beijing Declaration, women and men must mobilize together to overcome the remaining obstacles to gender equality. They must fight for an end to gender-based violence, for access to healthcare, for equal pay, and for equal participation in political life. The ink isn't dry. Be a part of Generation Equality and let us continue to write history together.
A clip from Joanne, who's part of the Dime Youth community. She's going to be talking about the struggles that women face and the importance of those struggles.
The pandemic has shone a light on many inequalities in our workplaces, schools, healthcare, and welfare systems. Unfortunately, young women in our community are not exempt from this and have had to face the triple threat of discrimination, of being young, of being women, and of being an ethnic minority. This has impacted the mental well-being of young women as pressures of normal life have been amplified. In the last 5 years, there is evidence of increased anxiety and depression among young women aged 16 to 24 years. But it's not just our mental health that is at stake. The system has opened more doors for dangers against our lives and livelihoods. An increasing proportion of young people aged 16 to 24 years has reported that they were finding it difficult or very difficult to get by financially. In some sectors, women are paid less than their male counterparts despite working the same jobs and are less likely to be considered for promotion in workplaces, making it difficult for young women especially to progress in their careers. This also can mean that women are less financially prepared for our futures. The average woman in her 20s will have to work almost 40 years longer than her male counterpart to build up the same pension. The government has delayed obligations on employers to reveal their gender pay gap figures, a reporting obligation that was hard won by women workers. They cited the pandemic as an excuse for this. But last year's figures show that women on average were paid nearly 20% less than men, with variations depending on the industry, location, as well as age. This pay gap means that the average woman has to wait more than 2 months of the calendar year before she starts getting paid, compared to the average man. Or in other words, women effectively work for free for the first 65 or so days of the year. So congratulations to some women workers. This is your first week on the payroll. Our parents and teachers do their best to prepare us for life after education, but the whole process can be overwhelming. One of the best ways to help address structural inequalities in the workplace is to join a union so that you are supported with your needs and you help other young women too. And while education institutions are no longer a man's club, meaning that in Britain girls get to access the education that they need, this does not mean that gender equality is completely present during a girl's upbringing. Societal and cultural norms mean that young women are often told that they can't be what they want to be, if what they want to be is reserved for a man. These social and cultural structures mean that there are less women going into industries such as engineering and potentially pursuing their dreams. Workplace and education inequality affects every woman of all ages and can cause disproportionate rates of poverty. But of course, there are much darker sides of gender inequality. Just yesterday, the Metropolitan Police said that one of their own was arrested on suspicion of murdering a young woman who had been missing for around a week after heading to her home in South London. This is the same force that time and time again puts out messages, posters telling young women how to behave, to not go home alone at night, not to walk on the streets at night, to not drink carelessly, promoting ideas that women are soft, vulnerable, who need to be cautioned against daring to be equal to men. Meanwhile, the lads are given passes for acting cautiously. After all, boys will be boys. It's not that surprising that a force that is in place to protect the system doesn't act to change it. What's possibly even worse is that just hours after this announcement took place, the hashtag #NotAllMen began trending on Twitter as misogynists jumped to defend themselves for the actions of those who have been exposed. This was in response to young women expressing outrage at the fact that something like this had yet again happened, and some even sought to share their own experiences in order to build a community against sexism. Virtually all young women in Britain have been subjected to sexual harassment, according to surveys from UN Women. These surveys warn that most women have lost faith that the abuse will be dealt with. Among women aged 18 to 24, 97% said that they had been sexually harassed, while 80% of women of all ages said they had experienced sexual harassment in public spaces. At the root of all of this is the normalization of the idea that a woman's body in a public place is simply public property, and young women just have to put up with it. We won't just put up with it. One of the most inspirational young women of our time, climate change activist Greta Thunberg, said, "We cannot solve a crisis without treating it as a crisis. And if solutions within the system are so impossible to find, then maybe we should change the system itself." It's not just up to us, young women, to change the system. All genders have a responsibility to demand change and to act on these demands, just as it is the responsibility of all races to speak out against racism and the whole of society to fight against injustices. But it is up to each and every one of us to make sure that we lead the way in building a movement that will benefit all genders, races, sexualities, and backgrounds. And of course, we need to learn from and support movements internationally to strengthen our cause. We know this is possible because generations of women before us have fought and even died to give us the rights we have today. And while we know that equal rights are nowhere near close to perfect, women's rights movements, which are usually led by young women, has helped build momentum and shows that organised struggle works. If it was not for previous women's movements, we would not have won the right to vote, the right to own property for ourselves, to go to university, have reproductive rights and control over our own bodies. We owe it to them and to ourselves and even to future generations to keep fighting for equal pay for equal work, for an end to sexual abuse, for the same education and work opportunities as our male counterparts, for an end to forced marriages and patriarchy in families, and for complete gender equality both in Britain and across the world. The thing that is more powerful than everyday sexism is the power of sisterhood, women supporting women. Now, more than ever, the voices of girls and young women are needed. This is what the mission of Daima Youth is, to organise young people together and to fight for a better future. Please reach out to us through Facebook, Twitter and Instagram to find out more about us and the work we do, and to take part in our social activities and meetings.
Next, we have a clip from Miriam, another member of the Daima Youth community, who's going to be interviewing her mom about what it means to be a woman.
Kadın olmanın nesi harika?
Kadın olmak her yönüyle güzeldir. Başta anne olmak, yani üretken olması, dünya kadınlar üzerinde güzeldir.
İkinci soruya geçiyorum. Kadın olmanın en büyük zorluğu nedir?
En büyük zorluğu erkek egemenli olan bir dünyada olduğumuz için kadınların sorunları artıyor. Ve kadın şiddeti çalıştığı alanda eşit ücrete tabi tutulmamaları, bütün ev işi yükünün kadınların üzerinde olmasıdır.
Üçüncü soruya geçiyorum. Genç kadınlara ne tavsiye edersin?
Genç kadınlara haklarını savunması, ayaklarının üzerinde durması, daha mücadeleci olmaları.
Who is going to be talking about women and her perspective on the challenges facing women.
Aslında klasik bir sözle başlamak istiyorum. Herhalde kadın erkek fark etmez. Önemli olan insan olmak diyebilirim. Fakat kadın olmanın güzel yanlarından biri kadınların bence zorluklara karşı daha güçlü olmaları. Bu belki anaç yapılarından da kaynaklanıyor olabilir ama örneğin savaşlarda ya da yakınının birisini kaybetmişse eşini, kardeşini toparlayan, ayakta duran her şeye rağmen yine baktığımızda kadın olabiliyor. Belki sorumlulukları gereği ama buna rağmen ayakta durabilen, güçlü olması bence güzel yanlardan biri. Diğer bir yanı da aslında kadınların daha paylaşımcı olduğunu görüyoruz. Belki bu yaşadığı sıkıntılardan, sorunlardan da kaynaklanıyor olabilir ama daha paylaşımcı olması, kolektif çalışmaya aslında daha yatkın olması, bunlar bence bizi yani kadın olarak önemli kılan özellikler. Zorlukları neler? Bence kadınlar her alanda aslında zorluk yaşıyorlar. Özellikle yaşadığımız sistemde örneğin hala eşit ücret alamayan yani bir erkeğe göre aynı işi yapsa da onun kadından daha fazla ücret alması bence acı. Gerçekten 21. yüzyılda kabul edilecek bir şey değil. Gene baktığımızda aslında güç dengesi açısından baktığımızda kadınlara karşı hem devletin ki savaşlarda ya da hükümetlerin savaşlarda biz bunu görüyoruz ya da muhalif kadınlara yönelik özellikle baskılardan biz bunu görüyoruz. Ve evde ya da değil sokakta eşinden, kardeşinden, akrabalarından ya da sevgilisinden ya da herhangi bir başka bir erkekten gördüğü şiddeti yaşıyoruz, görüyoruz, okuyoruz. Bunun için kadınların kendini devamlı bir koruma içgüdüsünde olması, özellikle şiddetin, kadına yönelik şiddetin daha fazla olduğu ülkelerde bu hakikaten çok tedirgin edici bir durum. Siyasette ya da politikada da aslında baktığımızda düşüncesi olan ama kendisini toplum içerisinde çok fazla ifade edemeyen bir kesimi oluşturuyor kadınlar. Bu belki diyeceği şeylerin ciddiye alınmamasından olabilir ya da yanlış bir şey söyleyeceğinden olabilir. Hep o baskı toplumdaki kadınlar üzerindeki baskısından dolayı kadınlar normal bir kampanyada ya da yürüttükleri politik çalışmada pratik çalışmaya yüklenseler bile söz söylemede, öne çıkmada geride olduklarını görüyoruz. Ben bunu kendi çevremiz açısından demiyorum ama genel anlamda baktığımızda bu böyle. Ya da siyasette evet mesela diyelim ki İngiltere'de parlamentoda kadın milletvekilleri var. Hatta bu ülkede dünyadaki herhalde ilk kadın başbakan olan ülkelerden biri. Ama hangi sınıfa ait diye baktığımızda Margaret Thatcher'ın burjuva sınıfını temsil eden bir başbakan olduğu ve aslında emekçi kadınları yani biz kadınları gerçek anlamda biz kadınların ya da biz emekçi kadınların mensup olduğu sınıfın çıkarlarını savunmadığını, onunla ilgili politika yapmadığını görüyoruz. O anlamda mesela bir Margaret Thatcher gibi bir kadın olmak istemem ya da o kadın diye her kadın o anlamda eziliyor şeklinde söyleyemem ama dünyanın yarısını oluşturan kadın nüfusunun çoğu emekçi katmanlarda yer aldığı için, işçi olduğu için, memur olduğu için, ev kadını olduğu için çoğu kadının da tabii ki hem sınıfsal anlamda hem cinsel anlamda hem de bazı ülkelerde ulusal anlamda ezildiklerini görüyoruz, yaşıyoruz. O anlamda hakikaten kadın olmak birçok zorlukları da beraberinde getiriyor maalesef. Genç kız arkadaşlarıma, genç kadın arkadaşlarıma daha doğrusu benim önerilerim nelerdir? Nacizane önerilerim. Kesinlikle okumaları, bu okumaktan kastettiğim sadece üniversite değil, kendilerini geliştirmeleri, okumaları, sorgulamaları, her şeyi kabul etmemeleri, doğru bildiklerinden geri basmamaları, doğru bildikleri üzerine inatçı olmaları, ve birlikte hareket edebilme, yalnız olmadıklarını bilmeleri ve kendisi gibi olan diğer genç kadın arkadaşlarla beraber var olan saldırılara karşı aslında sesini çıkarabilmesi. Yani ben diyebiliyoruz tabii ki. Özellikle gençlerde bunu daha çok görebiliyoruz ama ben olayı bizin içerisinde varsa eğer anlamlı, o anlamda biz diyebilmeliyiz. Yani biz kadınlar diyebilmeliyiz ve biz kadınlar da bir şekilde mücadele içerisinde yer almamız gerekiyor. Çünkü çalınan hakikaten özellikle gençlerin ve bunların içerisinde de özellikle genç kadınların geleceği. Kadınlar mücadelede daha güzel, genç kadınlar mücadelede daha güzel. Onun için önerim mutlaka bu mücadelenin içerisinde yer almaları, doğru bildiklerinden şaşmamaları, kendilerini geliştirmeleri, kendilerini ifade etmeleri, bunu söyleyebilirim.
We now have a video from Anisa Nandiwala, who reads a poem about choosing to challenge and call out gender bias and inequality.
Gender is a pre-written book, and the plot is boring. Daughter, girlfriend, mother, wife, rip out the pages, staple them to your back, and start soaring. Pretty, quiet, weak. They will try to describe you with such things, but you will use their stereotypes and turn them into your wings. When you choose to challenge, gender is a pre-written book, but not all the girls' stories end the same way. 33,000 girls are forced to become child brides every day. 132 million girls are not in school, and their futures are balloons that they watch drift away. But you are the full stop to the story. You are the new sentence that takes it on a different road. When you speak up, you open your palms and you share the load. When you choose to challenge, gender is a pre-written book, but not all of the characters are included, like the First Nations women who stand as still as statues, always walked past but never acknowledged or seen, or migrant women whose culture stands like a skyscraper, and they're forced to burn down the parts of themselves society doesn't deem convenient, or refugee women who are treated with brutality when we should have been lenient. And you are there as the story unfolds and you are faced with a choice. So choose to challenge. Gender is a pre-written book, and this is your chance to add your own chapter, to call out racism and sexism and use courage to rub it out, to stand where the rest of the world has chosen to sit, to call it out at home, at work, at school, bit by bit, to scream where the world has chosen to whisper, not just for your daughter, your mother, or your sister. Let us choose to challenge. Gender is a pre-written book, and if you're listening to this, then your actions are the pen. Your life is the paper. You are not the oppression of the past. I believe that you are so much greater, stronger, kinder. Choose to create history, not to be created by it. Choose to challenge.
Lastly, we have a historical clip from the Daimyo Women's and Youth Group where they are singing songs that support the empowerment of women. This is it for today's program. Thank you all for tuning in with us on our Youth Web TV program. If there are any topics or any youth-related questions or issues you would like to discuss or recommend, please message the Daima Youth Instagram at Daima Youth. Yarınki programımızda Britanya Alevi Federasyonu Genel Başkanı İsrafil Erbil'le Britanya'da Alevilerin nüfus sayımını dahil edilmesi neden önemli konulu bir söyleşme yapacağız. Thank you and see you in 2 weeks.